Today we're tackling something that confuses pretty much every man with IBS and actually a lot of people, even these IBS coaches and so-called gurus. You eat something and boom, within minutes your gut kicks off. Bloating, cramps, diarrhea, the whole works. So you think, it must have been that fill in the blank food I just ate. Logical, right? Except not really, because once you understand what's actually happening, you'll stop blaming the wrong food and start seeing the real pattern underneath your symptoms. So let's get stuck in. So I regularly get guys asking me about this and see comments like, I can't eat anything, whatever I eat gives me symptoms straight away, or my food just goes straight through me. And that's a horrible place to be. Thinking you can't eat anything and feeling like everything triggers your symptoms is awful. You should be able to eat and enjoy your food, of course. And then these guys, maybe even you, start adding more and more things to your list of foods that you think are triggers for your symptoms. And then before you know it, you've got a list as long as your arm, which is not good. Especially when I go through these guys, their food and symptom diaries, and find that they've been blaming and avoiding the wrong foods, which is sad really, because these guys were missing out on loads of foods and foods that they liked as well, or because the timing fooled them, understandably, because why would you know this stuff? You wouldn't. But obviously as well, and you'll know yourself, people saying, avoid this, this and this because they're IBS triggers. You've got to keep away from that. That'll trigger a flare up. And, posts on socials telling you what to avoid, which is nice that these people are trying to be helpful, but everyone's triggers are not the same. So what triggers symptoms for Gary won't trigger them for Bob. IBS triggers aren't a one size fits all. So let's break down the big question. Why does I ate such and such food and within minutes got symptoms almost never mean the meal you just ate is the culprit? You've eaten your lunch and bam, your symptoms have flared up. So say, for example, you had chicken omelette with some salad and a nice firm yellow banana with a little spoon of peanut butter. Cool. And then within minutes, your gut's going crazy. And naturally, you think to yourself, damn it, that means I can't have that again. Or maybe you blame just one or a couple of foods that you've just eaten. Right, it must be that banana, or, it must be that lettuce, or maybe it was that chicken, or, I can't have any of that again. So you just add those foods to your list of foods to avoid. And maybe, you keep doing this. It keeps going on and on and on. And this keeps happening. You eat a meal, you get symptoms, blame the foods you've just eaten. And before you know it, like so many men I see, unfortunately, your list of supposedly safe foods, their words, not mine, gets smaller and smaller. And by the way, I don't think it's helpful to say safe foods because it implies that there's unsafe foods or bad foods, and this can reinforce an unhealthy attitude towards foods and increase anxiety around certain foods, or even anxiety around eating altogether, which is never a good thing, and I don't want that for you. And before you know it, as their lists of foods they think they can eat get smaller and smaller, so does their food enjoyment, their confidence and morale. So let's unpack what's going on. What is causing symptoms straight after eating? Well, a few things, and there could be a few culprits, but none of them are the plain chicken suddenly turning on you. So the first thing, how long is your gut? Think about that for a moment. Is your gut like a hose pipe? You turn on the tap at one end and then gush, you see water coming out at the other end. And I get that it might feel like your gut is like this. Say you eat a burger or whatever and boom, you dash into the toilet for a poo. So it seems like the burger or whatever it was you've just eaten went in the top, your mouth, and then within minutes it shot through to the other end as poo, like water coming out of a hose pipe. But that's not how the gut works, thankfully. Although, you could say that your gut is like a hose pipe in one sense, because your gut does go from your mouth to your hoop, your bum, but it's far more complex than that, thankfully. So your small intestine is nearly 7 meters long and your large intestine is about 1.5 meters. And so your food has got quite a long way to travel, let alone what the gut needs to do and how long it takes for each of those sections within your gut. Because obviously your stomach has got to do its job. There's a small intestine. There's 3 parts of the small intestine. Then it's got to work its way through the large intestine before it pops out the other end as a poo. And depending depending on things like what you've eaten, how much you've eaten, and how your gut is working, depends on how long foods take to pass through the whole system from your mouth to your bum. But roughly, for normal transit time, this can take about 14 to 58 hours. So given how long it actually takes for food to move through the system, do you still think that food you've just eaten has literally just gone straight through you? No, exactly. What you've just eaten hasn't directly caused your symptoms, and loads of people get this wrong. So that's the first reason why what you've eaten isn't necessarily your symptom trigger, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit, but what else could be causing your symptoms after eating? So reason number 2 is a thing called your gastrocolic reflex. Maybe you've heard of it. Well, this is a reflex in your large intestine that's triggered when food hits your stomach. And there's also the gastroileal reflex in the small intestine. And your body is like, right, we've got some food coming in here, guys, let's make some room. And food hitting your stomach activates these reflexes to shift the food along the small intestine through to the large intestine and through to your bum, giving you the urge to have a poo. Hence, you can need a poo after you've eaten, and why symptoms can feel instant. And studies have shown that people with IBS can have a stronger gastrocolic reflex and therefore obviously contribute to symptoms. Plus, people with IBS can also have a more sensitive gut, so symptoms can feel more intense. And then there's also stress, the petrol on the fire. Picture this. So you're stressed at work, say, you've got deadlines, meetings, emails and messages coming in from everywhere, your head's all over the place, and you've not stopped all morning. And to top it off, maybe you've also got some dramas at home. And then you grab lunch and eat it as fast as you can, maybe consciously or subconsciously, because you need to get back to it. What state do you think your body is in? Your body is going to be in the fight or flight mode, ready for action, tackling these real or perceived threats, and stress levels are rocketing. So guess what? Digesting your lunch is low on the list of priorities because your body's thinking, we need to tackle these threats first, come on, we got to get to it. And then this can lead to gut symptoms. Now, remember earlier when I said that the food you've just eaten may not necessarily be your symptom trigger for you? Well, what I meant by that is the fact that your symptoms in that moment can't be your immediate trigger and cause symptoms there and then, because like I said before, with how long it takes for food to pass through the system. But that doesn't mean the food you've just eaten isn't a symptom trigger for you, because it absolutely could be. It's just that it hasn't reached your small intestine or your large intestine yet to cause symptoms. And then when you've just eaten, that food is still cruising around in the stomach, yay, getting mushed and mixed around like clothes in a washing machine. And depending on things like what you've eaten, how much, the nutrient content, hormones, stress, certain medications, if you've got a condition which delays the stomach emptying, so gastroparesis, so that food can sit in your stomach for several hours before moving down into the small intestine and beyond. And then once the food finally gets there, you could be in for a rough ride, depending if it is an actual symptom trigger for you or not. For example, if it's high in fermentable carbohydrates. So you could think of it like a conveyor belt. So food goes on at one end, your mouth, then into your stomach. This then triggers those gut reflexes I mentioned, getting that conveyor belt moving things along. Otherwise, it's a bit like being at the checkout in Aldi or Lidl. If you don't pack fast enough, everything just piles up and your gut doesn't want that. So it makes room, so those reflexes in your gut moves things along. So it's like meal in, meal out, sending you for a poo to make room for the food that's coming in at the top. Now, if the food already in your bowel contains triggers like fermentable carbohydrates, then once that conveyor belt moves things along, your bugs that naturally live in your large intestine are like, yay, dinner time. And then they start munching, fermenting those carbs and fibre, and then this can lead to symptoms. And this is why even if you eat a trigger food right now, there's no physical way that it's being fermented and causing your symptoms 5 minutes later. It hasn't reached the intestines yet. So does that make sense? Yeah. So if you react straight away, it's almost never the food you just ate. That trigger is often several hours, sometimes a whole day behind you. And that's the sneaky culprit. Delayed symptoms disguised as immediate reactions. And this catches so many people out. You think the food that you just ate betrayed you, but really the troublemaker was, say, the pizza from last night, or the baked beans that you ate at lunch earlier, or the protein bar that you inhaled without chewing. And because you don't know any different, which is understandable until now, Your brain naturally blames the most recent thing, so it's easy to misdiagnose your own triggers, and then that leads to avoiding loads of foods, risking your health and well-being on fad diets, wasting money on dodgy supplements and treatments, feeling stressed, frustrated and confused. But now you know better, hopefully, because you've been listening to this and you've got a better idea of what's causing your symptoms. So what do you do with this? So here's how to stop the guesswork and actually start to understand your gut. So 1, you need to track things and track backwards. You can't improve what you don't track, and also log things as you go. And then when symptoms happen, you can look back over the past 24 to 48 hours, not just at the last meal. And I've created a discrete men's IBS journal to help you with this, and I can share the link in today's show notes for you. Number 2, look for patterns, not single foods. IBS is influenced by various things like stress, sleep, workload, exercise, so not just what you ate. So it's looking at your lifestyle as a whole. 3, don't rely on memory. Your brain will blame the most recent thing you ate, and it's obviously super easy to forget what you've had or what you've done. So get yourself an IBS journal and write it down. And 4, of course, get help if you're stuck. There's no dramas in asking for help. You've got enough on your plate and you don't have to burden yourself with trying to figure out your IBS by yourself. And a trained gut dietitian like me can help you spot patterns in minutes that might take you months. So if today's episode gave you a light bulb moment, share it with someone who could also do with hearing this. And if you want help understanding your gut patterns properly, head to mensibsmastery.com. You'll find tools and resources and next steps there. Or you can email us at hello@mensibsmastery.com. So thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.